I remember it like a nightmare that refuses to fade, a family reunion meant to be filled with laughter and warm embraces, turned into a living hell. It was supposed to be our annual gathering at my uncle's old farmhouse deep in the woods, a place that held generations of memories. I was excited to see my cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents all together again. But that day, I wish I had never stepped foot into that cursed house. The farmhouse sat on a lonely stretch of road, surrounded by gnarled trees and thick underbrush. Its weathered exterior, with peeling paint and broken shutters, gave it a forlorn look as if it were mourning long-forgotten secrets. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, and a cold wind swept in as we arrived. I remember my heart beating faster, not from excitement, but from an inexplicable chill that crawled under my skin as I walked up the creaking porch steps. Inside, the house was dimly lit by the weak glow of old lamps. Family photos lined the walls, showing smiling faces from decades past, their eyes somehow full of sorrow. We all gathered in the main room, sharing jokes, stories, and a homemade feast. Laughter echoed off the bare walls, and for a brief moment, everything seemed normal. But as the sun began to set and shadows lengthened across the floor, a strange tension settled over us. It was as if the darkness was listening. That night, after we had eaten and the initial merriment had quieted down, a heavy silence replaced our laughter. I was sitting with my cousin Rachel when I first heard the sound, a low, guttural moan coming from somewhere deep in the woods. We exchanged worried glances, but dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on us. Yet, as the night grew darker, the moaning turned into something more and eerie, irregular pounding on the wooden walls, as if something was trying to break through. In the middle of the night, I awoke to the sound of frantic shouts. I stumbled out of my room, my heart pounding in my ears, and found chaos in the main hall. A door had been blown open by a force I couldn't see, and in its frame stood a massive, shadowy figure with long, twisted limbs. The creature's eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light that pierced through the darkness. I froze, paralyzed by fear, as I watched the monster move slowly toward our family. My uncle was the first to be attacked. I can still see the horror in his eyes as the creature lunged, its gaping maw opening wide. In one swift, gruesome moment, it seized him, and I heard his anguished scream echo through the halls before it was swallowed by a wet, slurping sound. I ran, not knowing where to go, my mind screaming that this was no dream but a nightmare unfolding before me. As I fled down a long corridor, I saw more of my relatives caught in the monstrous rampage. My cousin Daniel was dragged from the dining room as he tried to hide behind a table, his muffled cries of terror barely audible over the creature's heavy breathing. The beast's skin was mottled and scarred, and its long claws left deep gouges in the wooden floor as it stalked its prey. In the blink of an eye, it devoured Daniel, his limbs flailing helplessly. The taste of fear and the metallic scent of blood filled the air. I hid behind a fallen bookshelf, shaking uncontrollably as the sounds of horror swirled around me. Every distant scream, every splash of movement, made my blood run cold. I could hear the creature's ragged breathing echoing in the halls as it moved from room to room, hunting. In one terrifying moment, I glimpsed it in the reflection of a shattered mirror, a hulking figure with a wide, twisted grin and eyes that held nothing but hunger. That jump scare, sudden and surreal, sent me into a state of near paralysis. I prayed silently that it would not find me. Desperation took over, and I forced myself to crawl through the dark, blood-stained corridors. I tried calling out for help, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed each attack. Every step felt like a descent into madness as I passed room after room, each one bearing the scars of a vicious assault, doors hanging off their hinges, walls splattered with dark stains, and furniture overturned in frantic struggle. In the kitchen, I found a scene so horrifying that I couldn't look away. My aunt, who had been preparing a meal just hours before, was there only now. Her body lay in a grotesque heap, her eyes wide open in eternal terror. The monster's presence was felt in every corner of that room, as if it had left behind a trace of its vile essence. The memory of that sight still haunts me, the way her favorite apron was stained with dark blood, the way the cold, still air carried the scent of decay and dread. I made my way upstairs, seeking a safe room, but the house had become a labyrinth of horror. The staircase creaked under my weight, and I could hear the creature's low growl echoing from somewhere below. I reached a room that once served as a study, and barricaded the door as best as I could with a heavy desk. Inside, I sat in the darkness, the only light coming from the moon filtering through a cracked window. I could hear the sounds of chaos below, screams, the shattering of glass, and the relentless, inhuman sound of the monster feasting. I held my breath, praying that I would be overlooked. Time lost all meaning that night. I stayed hidden, my mind reeling from the horror of what I had witnessed, the monster eating my relatives, one by one, its grotesque hunger never sated. Each sound that echoed in the house was a fresh reminder of the unspeakable acts taking place, and each flash of lightning illuminated scenes I wished I could forget. Eventually, as dawn approached, the monstrous rampage began to subside. The creature, as if satiated or perhaps drawn by some unknown instinct, receded into the depths of the house. I emerged from my hiding place to find the silence heavy with loss. The once warm, lively home was now a gallery of horror, a place where blood and screams had been the soundtrack of the night. I wandered through the ruined corridors, my mind numb, piecing together the devastation. Bodies of my loved ones lay in unnatural positions, and the air was thick with the smell of decay and despair. I stumbled out of the house, the cool morning light a stark contrast to the darkness I had witnessed. The sight of the ruined farmhouse, now shrouded in a ghostly mist, was seared into my memory. I couldn't shake the sound of my relatives' final screams or the image of the monstrous face that had consumed them. The horror that night was beyond anything I could have imagined, a raw, brutal force that left nothing but silence and shattered lives in its wake. I wanted to run, to leave it all behind, but my feet refused to move. Something about the house felt unfinished, as if it still held answers or horrors that I needed to confront. My heart screamed for me to flee, but my mind whispered that I couldn't leave without knowing why this nightmare had unfolded. Driven by desperation and a need for closure, I forced myself back inside. The air was thick with the stench of blood and decay, and every step felt like a betrayal of my instincts. The house had fallen silent after the creature's rampage, but its presence lingered in every corner. The walls seemed to breathe with malice, and the shadows stretched unnaturally across the floor. I began searching for anything that could explain what had happened. In my uncle's study, where I had hidden during the night, I found an old journal tucked away in a drawer. Its leather cover was cracked with age, and its pages were yellowed and brittle. As I flipped through it, I realized it wasn't just any journal. It was a record of strange occurrences tied to the farmhouse. The entries were cryptic at first, mentions of odd sounds in the woods, fleeting shadows seen from windows, and animals found mutilated near the property. But as I read further, the tone grew darker. My uncle had written about discovering ancient carvings etched into trees near the farmhouse, symbols that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. He described finding bones buried in shallow graves around the property, arranged in patterns that defied logic. One entry stood out: "The house is alive. It breathes with something ancient and malevolent. I fear we have awakened it." My uncle's words sent chills down my spine. Had he known about the creature? Had he tried to warn us? The final pages of the journal revealed something even more horrifying: a ritual performed by my ancestors decades ago. According to my uncle's notes, they had summoned something from beyond this world in a desperate bid for prosperity. The creature was bound to the farmhouse by blood and sacrifice, but over time, its hunger grew insatiable. My family had unknowingly inherited this curse, and last night was simply its latest feast. I slammed the journal shut, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The monster wasn't just a random horror, it was tied to us by generations of greed and desperation. The farmhouse wasn't just cursed, it was a prison for something that should never have existed. As I stood there, clutching the journal like a lifeline, I heard it, the low growl that had haunted me all night. My blood ran cold as I realized the creature hadn't left. It was still here, lurking in the shadows of its domain. The sound grew louder, echoing through the empty halls like a predator announcing its presence. I knew I couldn't escape, not without confronting whatever this thing was. Armed only with my uncle's journal and sheer determination, I ventured deeper into the house. Each step felt like walking into my own grave. In the basement, a place we rarely visited, I found it waiting for me. The creature's twisted form was illuminated by faint rays of sunlight streaming through cracks in the walls. Its glowing yellow eyes locked onto mine, and I felt an overwhelming wave of fear wash over me. But something unexpected happened. It didn't attack immediately. It seemed almost hesitant, as if recognizing me or sensing something different about me. In that moment, I remembered one of my uncle's notes: "The creature feeds on fear but is bound by blood." Could there be a way to stop it? I opened the journal and began reading aloud from one of its rituals, a passage meant to banish the creature back to whatever hell it came from. My voice shook as I recited words in a language I didn't understand, but each syllable seemed to resonate within the walls of the farmhouse. The creature roared in fury, its twisted limbs thrashing violently as if trying to resist the ritual's power. Shadows swirled around us like living entities, clawing at my skin and pulling at my clothes. But I kept reading, forcing myself to ignore the pain and fear. As I reached the final words of the ritual, a blinding light erupted from within the creature's form. It let out a deafening scream, a sound that seemed to shake reality itself, and then vanished into nothingness. When I emerged from the basement hours later, exhausted and broken, I found that dawn had fully arrived. The farmhouse was eerily quiet now. No growls or screams or pounding sounds haunted its halls anymore, but its scars remained. I stumbled outside into the fresh morning air and collapsed onto the ground. Tears streamed down my face as I realized what had been lost. My family was gone forever, victims of a curse they hadn't even known existed. Even now, years later, I carry the weight of that night with me everywhere I go. The memories of their screams and their faces frozen in terror haunt me endlessly. The farmhouse has since been abandoned. No one dares go near it anymore. Sometimes I wonder if destroying the journal would have been better, if leaving those secrets buried would have spared us all, but deep down I know it wouldn't have mattered. The house itself is cursed. Its walls hold generations of sins too dark to erase. And so I live on, not truly alive but not dead either, a survivor marked by horror beyond comprehension, forever haunted by what lurked in those woods, forever afraid that one day it might return. Don't forget to subscribe for more horrifying stories and drop a comment if you liked it.